Fallout New Vegas premiered on October 19th, 2010, and ever since many have asked, is it the best Fallout game? I'm Mark from Digital Dissection. I've spent some time out in the Mojave, and today we're taking a critical look at the hit game developed by Obsidian Entertainment. Before we find out if the house always wins, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new videos and more pop culture content on this channel, where we're always dissecting. If you were a fan of Fallout 3, there's a chance that you might have wet your pants emphatically when Fallout New Vegas was announced in April 2009. Don't worry, I stayed noticeably dry after that. Now, for those of you who watched our first retrospective video, you might remember that I had no clue Fallout 3 was on the way in 2008. But when it came to Fallout New Vegas, I was absolutely locked in. After hundreds of hours of exploring Washington, D.C. and eagerly awaiting Fallout 3's DLC, since it was released on Xbox first. No, I'm not still jealous. Okay, yes I am. But at this point though, I was a reinvigorated, full-on Fallout fanboy yet again. Admittedly, the announcement brought me a small bit of pause, because even though I had enjoyed almost all aspects of Bethesda's revival of the franchise, it was crazy close in terms of development timeline, which could either mean a rushed game, or possibly a step back for the franchise, sending it back into a vault for who knows how many years. Right away though, a few details emerged that helped ease concerns somewhat. For one, Bethesda would only be publishing New Vegas, as they were knee-deep in developing Skyrim, and based on this demanding schedule, they instead outsourced the new Fallout game to Obsidian Entertainment. Right away, this inspired me to look into who exactly this studio was, as I had very little knowledge of them, but immediately noticed their involvement with Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Neverwinter Nights 2, sequels to RPGs initially created by BioWare. Digging further, however, unearthed that Obsidian didn't just make RPGs. They were built on a foundation of ex-employees from Black Isle Studios, a subsidiary of Interplay, Fallout's original creator. Black Isle Studios had a core component of the developers who actually created Fallout, and they'd be solely responsible for building out Fallout 2. This information was incredibly welcome news, as even during my playthroughs on Fallout 3, it wasn't really balanced by traditional RPG standards, and there also weren't a whole lot of references to the original Fallout games, so perhaps those responsible for building the lore might bring some of it back. Going into this Fallout game, however, I had more information, expectations from the successes of 2008, and a relatively open mind about the next entry in the storied franchise. The only potential concern I had was Las Vegas as a setting. While the city has plenty of iconography, a lot of it derives from bigger cities with frankly more opportunities to get your daily steps in. I'd be slightly wrong about that one, but more on that later. However, I once actually lived about 2 hours west of Las Vegas on a military base during the mid-90s, and it's a place built in literally the middle of nowhere. For that reason, I started to wonder, just how would Fallout work in such a place with so much room in between locations? In a short period of time, however, it dawned on me that this wasn't really a major reason to be concerned. After all, Fallout's first 2 games were both set in post-apocalyptic California, and part of the allure that early New Vegas had was that according to the information available, much of Las Vegas was relatively untouched by the nuclear devastation compared to Washington, D.C. in terms of series lore. Right away, however, it's easy to notice that New Vegas was a totally different experience. In my earliest moments of the game, I actually tried to best mimic what made my Fallout 3 character builds so successful. But by looking at perks, which you now only got every 2 levels as opposed to each one, many of the skills you easily got in the previous game either took longer to achieve or didn't exist at all. And while you didn't have to play New Vegas as a true survival game, the option was there for such a mode, and the non-survival experience made me feel more vulnerable than Fallout 3 ever did. It was a slightly more difficult game, even if it wasn't advertised as such. Now, part of the experience was easy to realize because you could craft food, ammo, weapon mods, and more. New Vegas was much more hands-on than its predecessor, and this level of customization ended up bringing about a fair amount of anxiety. Ultimately, though, that feeling would subside, instead helping me bond with my character build in a way that Fallout 3 couldn't quite touch. Mostly because many of the mechanics that Fallout New Vegas had weren't possible based on Fallout 3's design. In outsourcing development, Bethesda would hand over everything they had on their previous game to Obsidian. And its incredibly created and gifted team didn't just run with it. They broke out into a full sprint because they only had 18 months to work with. When you consider that timeline and the sheer amount of extra features like ammo variations, recipe possibilities, and playing Fallout like a true survival game, it's a massive shift in what Bethesda initially built. As I spent more time navigating New Vegas, however, I began to notice just how unique it was compared to the game that brought millions of new fans to the property. New Vegas had a look and feel reminiscent of the old American West, but it also provided a backdrop with constantly competing ideologies and more factions than its predecessor, reintroducing several parties from its earliest games like the New California Republic, Caesar's Legion, and numerous smaller factions surrounding the New Vegas Strip. New Vegas itself being under control by the mysterious Mr. House and his Securitron armies, new additions to the series. At the core of New Vegas, however, is a material struggle, as the Hoover Dam is a major point of contention. A relic of the pre-war world that still provides electricity to the area, a resource that the NCR and Caesar's Legion previously fought over, with the NCR successfully keeping control. Equally compelling, however, is the concept that the player is a courier who is left for dead by 3 unknown characters that we have no knowledge of. So in many ways, there's a desperate need to recover what the courier lost, a package containing a platinum chip, but at the same time, trying to understand their part to play with so many different factions seeking power in New Vegas. For this reason and the possibilities available, New Vegas plays like a much more organic RPG experience than Fallout 3. This is because the decisions the player makes can't truly keep everyone happy, and the possibilities of multiple endings and repercussions for your actions become more important as time goes on. In comparison to 3, your decisions in that game might impact some individual locations, like Tenpenny Tower or the fate of Megaton. But the remainder of the main campaign is a linear journey without many true decisions to actually contemplate. As I first played through New Vegas, this was actually somewhat jarring, as a few of my decisions caused some plot threads to instantly fail. And once I got over the fact that it wasn't truly failing in a traditional sense, it immediately got me thinking about what I'd do differently if I had to make the decision again, which I would end up doing for each possible outcome. From a bigger picture, New Vegas managed to do what so many sequels spectacularly fail at, which is preserving what works while still providing something unique enough to be its own identity. But let's rope back around to that original question. Why is this the best Fallout game? In my eyes, it's the fact that Fallout was originally a game that had a great core story about material scarcity. A water chip that required a vault dweller to venture out into a wasteland and bring back a critical survival piece to their home of Vault 13. The idea of building a game experience around a struggle for resources fits perfectly in a post-apocalyptic world, and the previously mentioned Hoover Dam provides the concept for that kind of story. We actually had a chance to discuss this concept with New Vegas project director Josh Sawyer about 2 years ago, who mentioned that the concept of material struggle is one that doesn't just take root in New Vegas, but for thousands of years of human history. At the core of the video game is the opportunity to impact who wins and loses in this fight, and the player character is the linchpin controlling the destiny of the Mojave. It's not just a matter of politics either, but a revival of factions that existed across Fallout's history, who were forgotten or entirely overlooked in Fallout 3's story, except for the Brotherhood of Steel and the remnants of the US government known as the Enclave. Material scarcity does in some ways impact Fallout 3's events as well, but the reasoning behind the water purifier at the center of its game and fresh water for all feels like a concept that even bad guys should be able to understand, but for some reason they didn't. In the world of New Vegas, however, it's much easier to conceptualize that electricity in a wasteland would be a motivator for many to choose sides and fight over, and the shadow of the first battle of the Hoover Dam is very real for many people, and it shapes many conversations with NPCs, even those that you overhear conversations with. Obsidian chose to set immersion at an all-time high, and there are many ways to feel like you're a part of this world, whether through direct or indirect contact. This doesn't mean that Fallout 3's story fails either, but shows just how much more Obsidian was able to do with the same tools as Bethesda, returning to aspects of Fallout's roots, while simultaneously improving on a game engine that already won plenty of accolades. Adding a more compelling story on top of the already established gameplay proves just how dynamic the Obsidian team is, and what they're capable of as RPG creators. Aside from all the gameplay mechanics that Obsidian sharpened, however, they also added considerable functionality to dialogue trees, NPC interactions, and just how powerful speech can be in an RPG world. As I mentioned earlier, my character build in Fallout 3 changed considerably in terms of skill point allocation, and speech became a major investment to ponder, as it can be critical to impacting plot events, even its in-game. Further building on the dialogue that's possible in New Vegas, another leap forward from Obsidian were the possibilities available with the many companions that join your travels across the Mojave. Each one has a unique story to tell, and they will react to you differently based on your behavior and how you interact with parties along the way. While a lighter version of this concept existed in Fallout 3 as well, it was much more heavily tied into the karma system, which takes a back seat in New Vegas. The expanded possibilities of companions, however, lead to real rewards, additional context of the game's previous events, and even breadcrumbs towards the game's DLC, which many regard as the best in the franchise. It's a major shift that impacts how your decisions impact other people, and naturally they'll speak up if they disagree. When you think about how hard it is to make a sequel, especially given the unique circumstances for New Vegas to even happen, it's an incredible achievement to do what Obsidian accomplished with a development schedule that's at least half of what most AAA games tend to get in terms of investment. This includes the difficult task of the voice talent among its cast, which includes Zachary Levi, Michael Dorn, Felicia Day, and even the late Matthew Perry. One major gripe that many critics have called out, however, is that New Vegas is plagued with performance issues, bugs, and a game that at times simply will not work without a hard reset. I can agree with this assessment because even the game's developers knew there were problems plaguing its experience, but a major contingent of these were felt for those playing on consoles, and New Vegas was designed to be played on PCs. It's not an excuse that anybody has to buy either, but even with playing the game on a PS3, it didn't stop me from trying to forge ahead. That's how expansive and truly varied the activities are across New Vegas. And with original perks like Wild Wasteland, random events can occur that serve as reminders that while Fallout can be a serious game, it can also be zany and unpredictable. So despite the issues with performance, I felt rewarded to push for the next random encounter, the next unique location across the considerable map of New Vegas, and what I thought would be a fairly truncated map actually provided hundreds of locations, buildings, and enemies to encounter. Overall, however, New Vegas earned such a high reputation because its core experience offers so many possibilities in the same way that a pencil and paper RPG could. Not to mention the considerable upgrades in gameplay mechanics, character interactions, and lengthy yet rewarding questlines that are mostly absent from Fallout 3. It straddled the line between satisfying what fans of Fallout 3 enjoyed, but brought back characters, references, and connected threads from over a decade previous in its history. New Vegas ends up finding a middle ground that Fallout 4 noticeably skinned its knees on, as the core of the 2010 game is rooted strongly in the player deciding what choices they want to have impact the Mojave Wasteland. This would be in lieu of a storyline that travels A to B. Instead, it's more of a choose-your-own-adventure style of existence. And while the path of the game may not satisfy everyone, the difficult task of molding the world to your liking is very unique in the Bethesda era of the franchise. Some might say that Fallout 3 learned to walk so that Fallout New Vegas could run. But what exactly did that mean for the rest of the series? After this point in time, Fallout 4 struggled mightily with dialogue options, and many more criticized its plot lines that were very vanilla in nature. One thing is absolutely sure in the years since: fan sentiment for Fallout New Vegas is incredibly high. And while rumors continue to swirl on the possibility of a New Vegas 2 with Microsoft ownership, makes you wonder if there's more story to tell in this setting. Fans have definitely clamored for it, but based on the sheer amount of content this underdog title provided, and the immersion it is capable of, it easily remains as my favorite Fallout experience to date. But what do you think? Was Fallout New Vegas a mess not worth playing? Do you have a game in the franchise that you prefer over it? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching this retrospective on Fallout New Vegas. Stay tuned for more retrospectives on this channel, and if you want to see more, we're always open to suggestions. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.